No targets in range. No targets in range. No targets in range.
Course laid in.
Can you hear my voice now? I've switched to my Razer mic. Can you hear that? Someone in chat, let me know. All right, can anyone hear me? I switched microphones. I switched to my Razer Keo, my camera mic. All right, cool. So I have no idea why this mic isn't working. I'll go ahead and move that out of the way. Yeah, so let me repeat everything that I had said at the beginning. So basically, this is a game that I wrote back in 1993. I wrote it in C. It's running under Windows 3.1. And this is running on a VirtualBox VM that I've got Windows 3.1 running on. So the game itself is not too terribly exciting. Basically, I can navigate to different star systems or different planets within star systems. I can set up bases there and have them produce different things.
Course laid in.
So now I'm going to head to this planet here. It tells me how far away I am. These are enemy ships, and I'm not sure why
no targets
it's not letting
range.
me lock on to one of them. Oh, there we go. So this is a cruiser, and those are frigates, so they're going to be pretty easy to kill.
Losing laser lock. No targets in range. Losing laser lock.
So torpedoes can only be used in warp. They can't be used inside a star system. But when you want to colonize a planet, oh, he had launched a decoy to basically avoid my missile. So the point of this game, I don't know if you ever played Empire under DOS, but it was a game where you could explore a map and you could capture cities, and the cities could produce armies or fighters or destroyers or submarines, cruisers, transports, and that sort of thing. And so this is kind of like that, except instead of producing armies and destroyers and stuff, you're producing ships and armament for your ships, and then also troops and fighter planes for attacking or defending planets. And so the game itself is not too terribly exciting. You can go to warp, and I can navigate to other star systems. And then I can look at the different planets that are in those star systems and see what kind of planets are there. And then, like, this one would be a good one to try and put a colony on. I can allocate my employment data based on the population to emphasize what it is I want to produce on that planet, and all of that. So if you're interested, I can dig into, thank you so much. I need to pay more attention to the chat. All right, so now I've switched over to my game. Sorry about that. So yeah, so I am inside a star system, and then I can navigate to another star system. I'll just pick one at random here. Oh, we're already there. And I can say engage, and
losing
laser lock.
And so now I'm outside of a star system, and this guy is firing torpedoes at me. So he's out of my arc now. I'd have to turn towards him to be able to continue to fire those, but I can launch a missile at him. And he's dead.
Losing laser lock.
So let's go look at the source code for this thing. So all this is running in a VirtualBox VM with Windows 3.1. So this is some pretty horrendous code. I mentioned that it is written in C. So this is not C++, it is actually just raw C, and these files are huge. So this header file here, which defines everything for the entire game. How many lines is this thing? 753 lines. So this is the header file. So if you've never used raw C, these are my enumerations. These are my structs. That define all the data in my game. And these are my functions. So the way C works is you have to define your functions in a header file, and then you implement them in the actual source file. So if I go down into this guy and go to my definition, this is the implementation. Oh, somebody's shooting me. That's the implementation of that function. So this is the function that's going to basically do my game loop. And the way I'm handling that is I have a timer message that's being sent to this dialog, and I define the timer, and I believe I'm having it execute every 500 milliseconds. Yeah, so I set a timer, and I want it to execute every 500 milliseconds. The commands will be sent to H dialog, which is this dialog here. And so when I get those timer messages, that's where I'm basically going to do my game loop. And my game loop, I didn't understand at the time the concept of delta time. And so I'm doing some really, really strange stuff in there. But everything that happens during the game loop is happening inside this function here for everything that's being processed in the game. So every ship, every planet, every weapon that's in flight, everything is all being processed inside of this game loop. And so I'm iterating through all of the ships, and then I will iterate through all the systems on every ship. And by the way, look at how long this file is. 2,120 lines in length. So this is some pretty hideous code. And like I mentioned, I don't have any concept of delta time. And so when it comes to moving things, I actually I did a loop from like 1 to 100 or from 0 to 100. And then I would move them 100th of a distance for however much it should move that frame. And because otherwise I might skip over them and my collisions wouldn't work. And the way I'm doing my collisions is I'm just calculating the distance to the target and then checking to see if I'm close enough to blow up. So I have a proximity fuse on my torpedoes and on my missiles. And then I've got systems for like attacking, like if I'm going to attack a planet. And again, this is all handled with these messages. So when you click a button, it would send a message, a command message to the window. So like if I click the add fighter button or the subtract fighter button or the OK button, it basically sent a command message to the class. And then I have this function where the actual attack would take place. And it's all this logic to determine, oh, do they have any surface guns? Do they have any fighters? Do they have any troops? And all this logic to determine whether my attack succeeds or fails, whether they capitulate or not, and I control the planet, and so forth. So this was a game, I probably developed it over several months back in 1993. And like I said, it was the very first Windows program that I ever made. And it's interesting too, with the way you had to manage pointers, I was using a global alloc. So I'm allocating global memory for all my pointers. And so I had to lock it, do something with it, and then unlock it. And that memory space can move around too. So when I do a global lock, I'm locking it. I have access to that position in memory. I manipulate the data at that address, and then I unlock it. So not very efficient. There's much more efficient memory handling for pointer handling that you could do than what I was doing back then. But this was, like I said, my very first ever Windows program. So yeah, what are y'all thinking so far in the comments from this little stroll down memory lane? How did I distribute? I didn't sell it or distribute it. I just made it for myself personally. The sound quality was WAV files, just uncompressed WAV files, Antonio. I can actually show you the actual raw source for this. For some reason, the Windows 3.1 VM will not play MIDI files, but all the music was MIDI, just played through the general MIDI instrument that was on the sound card. But the audio is just WAV files.
Course laid in.
That's my wife's voice. But yeah, I just added these as resources in the Windows resource file. And unfortunately, the Turbo C++ resource workshop that I would use to edit this is giving me an error, and it's saying that I can't open it because I don't have the Borland Windows Custom Control 2.0. But I obviously do, or else the game would not run. So I don't know if that's just a path issue on my system or what, but I can't edit the resource file to show you. I can edit the raw RC file. So let's see. I go back to my source code in Visual Studio. Let's see. I'm taking some torpedo hits. If I go down to, I think it's galaxy.rc. Oh, let's see. Yeah. So this is what it looks like in text form. And you can see I've got bitmaps for my graphics. I've got WAV files for my audio. And then this is all the definition of my dialogues, like the position of all the controls, and what menus I have on the forms, and so forth. So that's what a resource file would look like in Windows 3.1. Any other questions? Why don't I see my game? Oh, more windows. I don't see my game. I hear the audio in the background. Maybe it's in the games group. It's already running. There we go. Whoa. Let me blow these guys up.
Losing laser lock.
So the shields, I have forward, aft, port, and starboard shields. I can actually reinforce them with fuel. But when I take damage, it will take it to the appropriate shield based on the direction that the damage came from. And I have these logs here where I'm basically logging any message that I sent. So when I get hit, it tells me I sustained that much damage from a laser hit. I damaged his aft shield, and you can see the hull damage he's taken. He's taken engine damage as well, and you can see his lasers recharging.
No targets in range.
No targets in range.
Losing laser lock.
Okay, so I finished him off. And I can intercept him. And I can tractor him. And the advantage of tracking him is if I launch a missile, he can't launch a decoy. So I based that on a mechanic in a game called Starfleet Battles, which is a tactical starship combat game based on classic Star Trek. No, Antonio, I never tried to sell it. Why? Well, I don't. It was really just something I was doing for a hobby, and really just to learn how to write games for Windows, or just write Windows programs in general. And I guess I never really felt it was good enough to sell. And back then, you didn't have sites like itch or Steam or something like that where you could distribute games. I mean, 1993, I don't know of any, like online places where I could sell the game. I would have to probably have found a publisher to actually put it in a box with floppy disks and stuff to sell it. But there's so much more that I would change if I could get into this code and actually build it. If I actually try and compile this, the error that I'm getting,
Losing laser
I
lock.
can't find standard IO.h, which has got to have something to do with the path on my system. I honestly don't know what else it could be.
Course laid in.
But yeah, so I would probably try to implement the concept of delta time, which would be really simple. I would just save the time before, when I end the frame, I would save that time. So the next time I come in, I would just calculate the difference since the last frame. That's delta time. And then I would use that to make everything frame independent. Yeah, I definitely would do that. And I would break all this out. Instead of having one gigantic file like I've got here that's, over 2,000 lines long, I would break all these things out into separate files. And I would actually use C++ and make it object-oriented, because this is just totally procedural. And since I'm using Turbo C++, I could have used C++ and I could have made it object-oriented. But at this point in my career, I had never used, I had never done any object-oriented programming. I think I might have played around a little with object-oriented Pascal. So I had Borland Pascal, but I had never done any C++ at that point. But it is fun to go back and look at all my old code and see how I did things and just think about how far I've come. But even then, not knowing, not having a game engine, not even knowing what a game engine was, I still kind of approached it. I had what I called a cycle, a game cycle, which is my game loop, which is pretty much the way the game engine would work. I'm just doing all my own physics, myself. Oh, so let me show you the Gal Calc class or file. So this is where I do all the math for my game. And so this is all old school stuff where I got to convert from degrees to radians. So if I want to rotate something, so you have to do this conversion, right? To calculate
Entering standard
distance,
orbit.
if I want to adjust the position of an object, I'm going to take its current position and then add the distance times the sine of my heading and the cosine of my heading to adjust the x and y position. So this is a 2D game. It's not 3D, so I'm only moving in the x and y axis. But this is how you had to do, this is how you had to update your position, was you had to take your current position, calculate your heading, and then multiply it by sine times your distance, and then add that to your current position on the x, and then cosine and add it to your current position on the y. So yeah, this was definitely all old school stuff. This is all handled for you now with the different math libraries. I even had to universe the screen, so that was interesting. Calculate the draw position. I had a function, I don't know what file it was in, but I had to calculate an intercept. Oh, here we go. To calculate an intercept, there's actually a formula that would do this a lot better. But what I was doing was taking an iterative approach where I would estimate where I thought I would need to launch a torpedo to intercept the target. And then I would keep adjusting it up to a maximum number of iterations until I got the closest one, and then that's the direction I would launch my torpedo on. So I didn't know the math back then to actually calculate an intercept. And back then the internet wasn't as good. You couldn't search and find things as easily as you can now. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed that little stroll down memory lane. I know I certainly did. And maybe I'll try and reproduce this at some point in Unity. If you think that would be something fun, let me know. Or if you have any other ideas of things you would like to see on my channel, drop a comment. And for those of you that joined and logged in, I really appreciate you watching me and taking this nostalgic trip down memory lane. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck on your game development journey.